The Catholics of Oz is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit GiveStarQuest.com.
You're listening to episode 154 of The Catholics of Oz. The Catholics of Oz is a show where we discuss faith, culture, and what's been happening from an Aussie perspective. Whether it's synods or science, apostolates and apps, providence or productivity, you can hear it right now on The Catholics of Oz. Hello, I'm Lindsay Sant, and thank you so much for joining us for episode 154. It's so good to have you with us. I'll get straight into it because we've got quite a bit of content to share with you today. I am joined by my lovely sister, Caroline Knight. Caroline, how are you today?
Hi, well, thank you. A little confused by Melbourne weather, but isn't that normal for Melbourne?
It is so normal to be confused by Melbourne weather. And also confused by Melbourne weather, and with us today is Lito Sabol. Lito, apart from being confused by Melbourne weather, how are you today?
I'm doing well, guys. Yes, Melbourne weather's been confusing. It's meant to be autumn, and then it's very soon enough will be winter? No, yes. Autumn, winter, spring, summer. Yeah. Okay. And I think in Melbourne, we don't really care about the weather at the moment, like the seasons in a sense. It's just when we want to plan things. Oh, this is so annoying. We want to plan something new. Yeah.
Just have to do what every Melburnian does and put your wardrobe in the boot of your car and you'll be right to go.
Right. And always bring an umbrella.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Whether it's hot or cold here, always bring an umbrella.
That's right.
Yeah.
Just bring it. Bring it.
All right, we've got some great things to share today. Before we do, if you're new to listening to The Catholics of Oz, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or your favorite podcast player. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and some positive feedback so that we can hear from you and reach new people, which is what we are all about. SQPN also hosts The Catholics of Oz on YouTube, so you can just type in SQPN on YouTube and you can subscribe there once you find it. And don't forget to hit the bell for notifications when new episodes of this show and all of the other awesome shows on StarQuest are released. So guys, with that, let's get into it right away. Let's start with Faith Beyond Borders.
Well, I'm actually feeling rather good about this. I think we've all arrived at a very special place, eh? Oh. Spiritually, ecumenically.
How do you make somebody love you without affecting free will?
Welcome to my world, son. You come up with an answer to that one, you let me know.
Yes, I had to work very hard to pass Latin and theology.
Oh, quite. Those are, of course, the most important things.
Oh, yeah.
I'd sit this one out, Cap.
I don't see how I can.
These guys come from legend. They're basically gods.
There's only one god, man. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that.
It's interview season for the Catholics of Oz. We've had 3 interviews, so this is a second one. I've got another one coming up next episode. I won't say anything about that just yet. But in this episode, I am very happy to share with you an interview that I did with Odhran O'Brien. So Odhran is an archivist in Perth, and he is currently supporting the Diocese of Geraldton, doing a research project on Monsignor John Hawes. Now, I won't say a lot because there's more information in the interview, but just a brief overview that Monsignor John Hawes was a priest in the 19th century who spent about 45 years in Australia. And there are 2 amazing things about him. One is that he was an amazing architect. And the second thing is that he was an ordinary Catholic priest who was loved by the parishioners that he had. And the Vatican has cleared the way for an investigation now to be done into the potential canonization one day of Monsignor John Hawes. Now, it's very early days, so we're not talking about like weeks or months. We're talking about probably years, but this is the first step. So Odhran is going to be, or is currently at the time of recording, doing some research overseas in different places where Monsignor John Hawes was around the world. And he's doing some investigations into some more archives. So I won't say much more about it because Odhran will explain it in the interview, but it is my great pleasure to share with you my interview with Odhran O'Brien. Odhran O'Brien is an archivist based in Perth, Australia, and is currently working with the Diocese of Geraldton on a research project to support the cause for canonization of Monsignor John Hawes, a 19th century priest who was known both for his architectural achievements, for being a beloved parish priest and a lover of pets. And today, Odhran is my guest. Odhran, welcome to the Catholics of Oz.
Thank you very much, Lindsay, for having me on the show.
And I'm so grateful you reached out to us about this story, because any chance we get to promote a potential Aussie saint, we're happy to be part of that conversation. So I thought maybe if we just get you to introduce yourself first of all to our listeners, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your role there in Perth?
Sure, yeah. I hope you don't mind if I'll take you on a little bit of a journey, because I think the context is important.
Sure.
Hopefully it's interesting. I guess that life takes you on lots of unexpected directions over time. I started off my journey researching history and not thinking that I would end up doing what I'm doing. While I was undertaking my undergraduate studies at the University of Notre Dame in Fremantle in Western Australia, towards the very end of that, I undertook a unit in archaeology. I thought, maybe I'll branch out, and grew up in the era of Indiana Jones, and it looked very romantic.
What a great era to come from as well.
And towards the end of that practical, the lecturer invited me to participate in another dig. And that dig was the exhumation of two bishops from St. Mary's Cathedral, because they were about to undertake a significant renovation of the building and build an underground crypt. And they needed to remove the bishops in order to build the crypt. Now, why I'm mentioning this and why it's relevant to this discussion is that towards the end of that exhumation, there was discussion that Martin Griever, who was one of the two bishops that was buried underneath the cathedral, that he had a very saintly reputation, and the diocese wanted to start to investigate his life with the possibility of putting him forward his cause for canonisation. And I ended up undertaking my master's research on his life and helping gather together all of the primary documents. And whilst that hasn't progressed, it was a great opportunity and learning opportunity for the research that I'm currently doing. So I think it's amazing to have the opportunity to research not one but two potential saints in a lifetime, and not something that starting off studying history I thought I'd ever be doing.
Yeah. It's amazing that you've got to this point where you're now researching Monsignor John Hawes. Can you, maybe a double-loaded question here, a double-barrel question here, can you tell us, just give us a brief introduction to who he was? And also, can you tell us a little bit about where he is on the road towards canonization? Were we very early days, or are we a bit further in, or where that is now?
Yeah, absolutely. As a historian, I won't go into I won't give you a chronological overview of his life, because historians love providing people with dates, and I don't want your listeners to be sitting there listening to me rattle off a series of dates. But the really interesting thing about John Hawes is he started off his life as an Anglican. So he was born into an Anglican family, and he had quite a strong devotion to the Church of England to start off with. However, he decided that he wanted to study architecture. And while he was studying architecture at King's College in Canterbury, he used to spend a lot of time in the medieval cathedral there, which has a strong Benedictine monastic link. And from what I understand, having read the biographies on his life and some of his early writings, it's really architecture and the spirituality of these places that planted the seed within him that led him to Rome. However, he spent quite a considerable time as an Anglican, his youth, and then after he studied architecture, he actually became an Anglican priest for a period of time. And however, throughout his early career, there was something unsettled in him, or he felt that he needed to search for something else. His spiritual dimension was not at peace. And it was actually after him becoming an Anglican priest, there's quite a long story about different positions that he's held, and he for a time lived in a Benedictine community. But he eventually ended up in the Bahamas, rebuilding churches that had been destroyed by storms. And it was there that he decided that he was going to convert to Catholicism, and that changed the course of his life then. And while studying in Rome, he met the Bishop of Western Australia and ended up out here.
Yeah. And I was reading that when he first came to Western Australia, I think he was complaining about the heat and saying something along the lines of there's nothing to do but flop around all day, which I thought he was already very Australian just from that quote there. So where are we in terms of his progress towards canonization? Is it still very early days with the research that you're about to do?
It is, yes. The way that the process works is that the bishop, the diocese in which the person died is the diocese that has responsibility in the first instance for promoting the cause. In this case, he died in the Bahamas. Well, he actually died in Miami, but he spent his last days in the Bahamas. So the Bishop of Geraldton here in Western Australia, because he spent such a significant period of time here and made such a significant contribution to the Diocese of Geraldton, petitioned the Archbishop of Miami and the Archbishop of the Bahamas to take custody of the process and applied to Rome to begin investigating his cause. And Rome issues what they call a nihil obstat, which is essentially to say that they have no objection to his life being investigated. So that's the very early stages. And then what happens is the local bishop will officially decree and create a commission that investigates the person's life.
That's amazing. You're involved in this process, which, by the way, I think is really exciting to be involved in that. And you mentioned that you'll be traveling to the US, the UK, the Bahamas to do some further research. What are you going to be doing? What are you going to be looking for on this journey?
As a qualified historian, I have the several discrete roles within the process. My role primarily is to undertake exhaustive research on his life and gather all of the primary documentation associated with him, looking particularly at how he displayed virtue throughout his life. And because he travelled to so many different locations across the world, I start off by going to America, and I'll visit a place called Collegeville. The Benedictines there originally looked after the Bahamas. Mm-hmm. And so I'll be undertaking research in their archives to gather all of the original correspondence between Hawes and the bishop that was in charge of the Bahamas. And then I actually travel to the Bahamas to look through the diocesan archives there and the parishes where Hawes built churches and the island where he spent his last days as a hermit. And then I'll be heading over to England to look at some of the parishes where he was an Anglican priest and gather again the original documentation from there. And that's the first trip. So that takes about 3.5 weeks. And then next year there'll be further research in Rome and probably some other locations in the US.
Yeah. 3.5 weeks sounds like a very condensed period of time. Are you going to be very busy? Is that if you've only got that much time to go through these archives?
Look, yes, I will be, because Rome has very specific requirements about how you gather material, how you authenticate the material that you gather. So it'll be a very busy 3.5 weeks. And maybe on the positive side, I'll be so busy and moving so frequently that I won't have time to be jet lagged.
That might be a positive, yeah.
But look, I think it's an opportunity to immerse myself in Hawes's life. And it's so unique in the sense that starting off life as an Anglican, becoming a Catholic priest, but along the way exploring Benedictine monasticism in the Anglican Church, exploring Franciscan spirituality in the Catholic Church when he became a Catholic priest. And he maintained that connection to the Franciscans right until the very end. And how he expressed his faith through building. There's 25 buildings, for example, in West in this unique arts and crafts style. And the interesting thing is he was not only designing these buildings, but he was actually physically building a lot of them himself. So the devotion is incredible.
Yeah. And I want to ask a few questions about the man, but before I get to that, I wanted to ask you as well, what do you look for in these different archives? Is it things that he wrote, or is it maybe testimonies about him, things that other people said? What materials are you going to be accessing to produce your final report?
Yeah, look, to start off with, basically it's everything I can get my hands on and then narrowing that down as I go along. But certainly one of the requirements is that all of the writings, all of the material written by John Hawes needs to be gathered together, and that will have to be sent off to Rome as part of the final report. So everything that he wrote himself will need to be gathered, but then certainly looking for testimonials from people that knew him and commented on his life or way of life and spirituality are important as well.
Yeah. Now, one of the reasons that you contacted me was, and this really reached out to me as well, was you were talking about how there's these extraordinary things that he has done, but that he was also known for the ordinariness, the parish priest that he is. And so I wanted to unpack a couple of those things. Can I start with Monsignor Hawes, the architect? Tell us a little bit about why he decided to get into architecture and what was so maybe special or unique about the churches and also the cathedral at St. Francis Xavier that he built as well.
Yeah, so I think, as I mentioned, from a very young age, he had this desire to draw and draw buildings. And it was that love of drawing and studying buildings and understanding their form and how they were put together. So I think there was that intellectual connection to architecture, and then being a person that obviously had an intuitive spirituality, that love of structures linked into or focused in on churches specifically as a young person. And then as his spiritual journey continued, his interest broadened in terms of different types of ecclesiastical structures. And then he went on to study architecture. And I think it's the fact that he followed that journey in life that made him somebody with a deep faith, but also there was a grounded aspect to him in that he could relate to everyday people easily. So he studied architecture, he undertook his articles or apprenticeship as an architect, and so therefore lived an ordinary life, having to earn a living and do all of those things that the rest of us have to do whilst continuing to develop his spirituality. And I think that perhaps is the thing that is most relatable about him for people in everyday life today that are so busy earning a living, family, doing all of those other commitments. And it's interesting, in reading his biographies, when he moved to Western Australia, he ended up being posted in some really remote locations. Mm-hmm. To people that may have had a priest visit or live in the town infrequently. And so he had to develop strategies in order to engage the local Catholic population. And so what he would do, so he had to meet them where they were at. And that may mean attending race meetings, going down to the local hotel and he used to read his newspaper and have a drink occasionally, because that's where the Catholic men were at. And in order to encourage them to come to church, he knew he had to go to those various locations and hang out in order to meet them and convince them that he wanted to see them on Sunday at church. So I think that just makes him not only incredibly intelligent and intuitive, but relatable.
Yeah. I was reading, because I was looking at the website with the resources that you shared. I haven't read everything. I've looked at a lot of things though. And that he was known for his pastoral approach to people and that he was beloved for that. And I think it's not all the time that we can see someone who is so extraordinary, but so everyday at the same time. I think that's incredible. I wanted to ask also briefly, because this kind of piqued my interest. On the website, there's a virtual tour of St. Francis Xavier Cathedral that he built. I don't know if you've been there, but yeah, you have. So can you just, because now it's on my bucket list to go, right? So if I or any other pilgrim decided to go and visit St. Francis Xavier Cathedral at some point in the future, what would we discover about his spirituality and his approach to design of holy places by being there?
I think the really interesting thing about St. Francis Xavier Cathedral is it both responds to its environment and it also stands out from its environment. You're driving north from Perth to Geraldton, and then you come down the main highway leading into Geraldton, and you see this sort of Spanish mission-style cathedral coming out of the ground. It's one of the first major buildings that you see on the way into Geraldton, and you can't but be struck by the fact that it's very different to most churches in Australia, because of the significant Irish influence of the bishops across Australia in the 20th century. Most of our major cathedrals are built in a Gothic style. So on a national level, it's a really unique building. And you see the Spanish-style mission, of course, it responds to Hawes's personal love of the Franciscan order. Of course, they were very influential within California and other places where this particular style of architecture is known. So it speaks to his personal spirituality. But I was talking about the fact that you drive into Geraldton and you see this building that in some ways you question, why is that style of architecture or type of building in that place? But the materials that he used are from the local area. So it has this lovely red colour within the render, which responds to the red dirt of the Midwest, and local woods and bricks. So whilst the style is quite different to something you would normally see in that area, the materials give it a sense as though it's almost grown out of the ground organically. Right. So, yeah, it's a really interesting building. And then throughout, the genius to the way that Hawes built his churches was not only was he so concerned about how they looked on the outside in terms of drawing people into the church, but he paid so much meticulous attention and detail to the interiors of these buildings that he designed detailed frescoes and other artworks inside stained glass, and designed a lot of the furniture specifically for those buildings.
Amazing how meticulous he is. I was curious about this. And now that you've mentioned he's used local materials, the layers. So the walls inside the cathedral are like layers of different colour. So is that because of the materials, or is there something deliberate going on there as well?
Yeah, certainly internally he has this sort of Moorish Roman style in which the building's painted, and that seems to appear in a number of his buildings. And that's not necessarily a response to the local environment, but more of his personal spirituality. And I talked about the medieval Benedictine link. You'll see that there is lots of similarities in the way that he's decorated his churches that relate to that medieval Benedictine style.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Now, going from the grand to the ordinary. Now, I'm not sure how much you know about this topic. It was just something interesting and a couple of anecdotes I saw in reading about him. But Monsignor Hawes was also a lover of pets. Is there anything you can tell us about this if I put you on the spot? Because I've got to say, so my sister Caroline and Lino, who also host this podcast with me, all three of us have pets that we love very much. And so we can relate very much to this. Is there anything you can tell us about Monsignor Hawes' love of pets?
Yeah, well, he loved both horses and dogs, and he actually bred the terriers, and Dominique was one of the name that he gave to one of the terriers that he bred. And I've just had a mental blank as to the particular type of terrier, but nonetheless, and that was being a priest and having to travel and spend lots of time by himself. I think having a pet, again, was able to ground him and give him a sense that he had some company. So I think that was important to sustaining his ministry.
Yeah, and I'd read that he really struggled with the separation from his dog when he had to go overseas again and couldn't take Dominique with him as well. So
yeah, so when he left, in the end, he couldn't convince the Bishop of Geraldton to release him. As he was aging, he felt that he wanted to live as a hermit, focus on prepare himself for the next journey, and spend time focusing on his spiritual self. And so he left Geraldton, and he didn't actually tell the bishop that he was not returning. So he had to leave. He had to leave Dominic in Geraldton because he didn't want to make it known that he wasn't coming back. So yeah, he really struggled with that. I think he mourned losing his little pet for several months after.
Yes, yeah, it's very difficult to do. So what can we, just from your experience so far and your impression of him, what can we as everyday Catholics learn from him, from his model of holiness? What, if we saw him as a role model for our lives, what do you think we'd be taking from him as a role model for us?
It's interesting. I've read the lives of the saints, and these are incredible people of virtue. I think it's sometimes with those saints that are removed from us significantly in time, it's often you admire them, but it's not necessarily easy to relate to them. Mm-hmm. I think that the wonderful thing with Hawes as a person that lived an extraordinary life is he provides an example of somebody who had significant challenges in terms of his spirituality along the way. And each time he fell or he had a challenge, he got back up and continued again. So I think that sort of resilience and persistence and desire to really form his inner spiritual life is a great example for us all.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So let's do a bit of a hypothetical. So let's pretend that a couple of years down the road, hopefully not too many years from now, Pope Leo or whoever the next Pope is saying Mass for the canonization of Monsignor John Hawes and declares him a saint. So a lot of our saints will usually have something attached, like, for example, a saint for our pets, a saint for IT, a saint dedicated to poverty. What would we attach to Monsignor Hawes? He would be we pray to him as a saint of what? What do you think off the top of your head?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I'm not 100% sure. As you said, there are a couple of major threads through his life. Certainly love pets. So maybe that's a strand. That persistence in building places for people to gather and worship. So maybe he'll be a patron saint of churches or the ordinary man, which again was a sort of particular focus of his. Yeah. But as you say, we've got a long way to go. And certainly my role is really to collect all of the historical information and provide a clear, objective outline of what that information tells us. And then it's really for others to decide whether or not he becomes a saint. So I'm just a small cog in the wheel.
Yeah, part of the process. Before we wrap up today, is there anything else that you wanted to tell us that you'd like our audience to know about him as your journey of research of him progresses?
Well, I'm certainly hoping to document the process as I'm collecting all of this material. So we've got a John Hawes Foundation LinkedIn page. So we'll be providing updates there. The John Hawes website will also be putting updates on there, and the John Hawes Facebook page. So I encourage people to follow that so they can see the journey, how we collect the material, what we find out about John Hawes along the way, and engage and enjoy the process.
Yeah, excellent. And when does your 3.5 weeks away for research begin?
I leave on the 2nd of May, and there's been significant reorganising in the last couple of weeks with some of the international circumstances and having to travel in different directions. So it's been quite busy preparation, but we leave on the 2nd of May, and I've also had to do lots of study in terms of the Roman requirements and processes. So I'm really looking now forward to getting into the archives and seeing what it tells us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Odhran, we would love to follow up at some point in the future when you've had a chance to process what it is that you've learned, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot to go through, and to see what you've discovered about Monsignor Hawes. But I want to say thank you so much for just being a guest today and for giving us a bit of an introduction to who Monsignor Hawes is. And on behalf of our listeners, we'll be praying for you and just urging you on for the work that you're doing, and just looking forward to learning more about his life. We'll also share some of the links that you've shared with me as well, so that people can follow along. But most importantly, thank you so much for being a guest today on the Catholics of Oz and for giving us a bit of a handshake with the Monsignor.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I absolutely welcome all your prayers.
All right, there we go. Thank you so much for that.
Pleasure. Look, I hope there's enough material in that to piece together something that's useful.
So I hope you found that fascinating. And as mentioned, we are hoping at some stage that Odhran will come back on the show to give us an update on how his research went and any new discoveries and insights that he has found in the journey to potentially another Australian saint, which would be wonderful. Let's move on, guys. And now let's talk about science.
What
I'm there for science.
You have any hobbies?
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
Can you reverse the polarity?
I'll do my best.
Science, 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 science. Science, 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 science. Yeah, I like science.
All right, Caroline, I hope you've got your grading book there and your criteria sheet ready to go, because I'm gonna be taking the steering wheel on this one, and God literally knows where this is going to go. So we'll see how this. Yeah, all right.
I'm sure it's going to be great. Don't you worry.
All right,
sounds like
cool.
an interesting topic.
Yeah. Let's see if I can make it interesting. All right. Yeah, I was looking around and I found this article from Science Daily, which I wanted to share today. And this is from the 15th of April this year, fairly recent. And the headline for this topic is "The Surprising Reason You're So Productive One Day and Not the Next." So I'll just start by throwing it out to you guys. Caroline, in a typical week, and we're not just talking about work, we're talking about life itself, because you balance work, you balance your boys, you balance all the family things you have to do. How often do you feel like you are productive in that week, and how often do you feel like you've just got to get through it, but it feels like a slog to get it done?
It's so true. It's like some days you wake up energetic, going to do everything. You do so much in a day and you're like, yes, smashed it. Next day, you're like, oh, I can't be bothered. I just can't get my brain into gear. You got so much to do. I don't know where to start first. Yeah, I totally have that. Yeah.
Yeah. Lena, what about yourself? How often do you feel like you're smashing the days and other days the days are smashing you in a typical week?
I think this is onus on myself. If I have a late night, the night before, and you wake up the next morning and go, yep, can I be bothered? Can I get something done? Yeah, that's the struggle. But I guess if you try to plan in ahead, a lot of people can't. Some people do, some people don't. It is what it is, and that's how we all work, yeah? If we can try to get to bed early in some way, like I say, with families and people who are very busy, you get some extra sleep. I think it's more, what do you think, guys? It's trying to get the more sleep that you can and rest the day before, however you want to do it, and try to re-energize yourself back. And that's not only just physically as well. I'm thinking more like spiritually as well. And it can be challenging through our lives. For myself, it's just work. Wake up in the morning, go to work in the warehouse, and also, and sometimes I do feel energized to know that, okay, I have something that needs to be done. I do not like days where it's very slow and it's just toddling along. I am not going to sweep a floor for 8 hours. I can tell you that. It's just so boring it can be. But I think as long as we know that something is coming ahead and we're planning something, washing the car, planting the tree, walking the dog, spending time with family, I think that's when you get excited. You know what I mean? Well, I'm going to see my brother or sister. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've ticked off two of the things that will come up in today's topic. So when you hear them, just call out Bing or something when you do it. Right?
Sounds like a little ad.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah. I'll get into it then, because you've both referred to a couple of things that will come into this topic. So there was a study on this by the University of Toronto, Scarborough, and the study suggests that feeling mentally sharp can significantly boost how much you accomplish in a day. Researchers found that when people are thinking clearly and efficiently, the effect can equal roughly 40 extra minutes of productive work. So this was published in Science Advances, and there'll be a link in the show notes today. The research tracked participants over 12 weeks to better understand why people sometimes struggle to follow through on their plans. The finding points to daily shifts in mental sharpness as a key factor. So on days where participants felt more mentally alert, they were more likely to set goals and complete them, whether tackling schoolwork or doing everyday tasks like making dinner. Some days, everything just clicks. And on other days, it feels like you're pushing through fog, says Sandri Hutchison, Associate Professor in the Department of Psychology at the at U of T, or University of Toronto, Scarborough, and the lead author of the study. What we wanted to understand was why that happens and how much those mental ups and downs actually matter. So they did this study And here are some things that they found. So first of all, what is mental sharpness? It refers to how clear, focused, and efficient a person's thinking is at any given time. So when it's high, people tend to concentrate more easily, make quicker decisions, and follow through on tasks. When it's low, even simple activities can feel difficult. Now, guys, before I go on, I can relate to this a lot because at work, I'm a high school teacher. So I've got the teaching side of things and I've got the admin side of things. I love both because both have an important purpose. But there are times where a really simple task like filling out a form to book a bus or to organize an excursion just feels like a grind, like it's really hard to get through. And it's usually because I do it at the end of the day. And so my mental sharpness is dropped. And I'm just pushing through trying to get this task done so that I won't have to do it tomorrow or because it just needs to get done. So I can really relate to that. So what they did was instead of comparing different people, they followed the same individuals over a period of time. So this allowed them to see how changes within a single person influence their daily success or struggles. So the participants completed short daily tests that measured how quickly and accurately they could think. They also reported on their goals, their productivity, their mood, sleep, Lino, and their workload. So this detailed approach helps the researchers connect mental sharpness directly to real-world outcomes rather than just relying on general averages. So the daily brain changes that we have can actually shape our success or failure through the day. The results showed a clear pattern. On days when students were sharper than usual, they completed more of their goals and often aimed higher, especially with academic work. But on days where their mental sharpness dropped, even routine tasks were really hard to finish. These effects were consistent regardless of personality traits. So qualities like grit or self-control influenced overall performance, but they didn't prevent people from having less productive days. Hutchison says everybody has good and bad days. What we're capturing is what separates those good days from the bad ones. So you could have your personality had some influence, but it wasn't the main influence over how sharp you were. Like, for example, when you have a lot of grit, you just grind through, you just push through and you get it done. But it doesn't make your focus necessarily sharper or better. It just means that you hang in there and you get it done. And maybe you don't give up as quickly as someone else might give up. Go, I'll do it tomorrow. I've had enough. I'm done. I can't do it. You might go, I can't focus anymore, but I'm just going to get this done because I really need to get this done right now. Or because I have a list. I'm going to complete the list no matter how long it takes. Yeah. So there's that. So what they found was that the mental sharpness matters in practical terms. So by analyzing cognitive performance over hours of work, they estimated that being above or below your usual level of sharpness could shift your productivity by about 30 to 40 minutes in a single day. The gap between your best and worst days could total around 80 minutes of work. So 40 minutes makes a huge difference when you're getting work done, right? And
wow, true.
So that's a really important thing to think about. So what influences mental sharpness each day? We'll get a bit practical really soon. So mental sharpness is not fixed. It fluctuates based on short-term factors. So the students who are part of the study tended to perform better after getting more sleep than usual and earlier in the day, Lino. There you go. So they would have more mental sharpness and their mental performance would decline later on in the day rather than earlier in the day. So feeling motivated, there's another one you talk about, Lino, and focused also boosted sharpness, while depressive moods were linked to lower levels. So if you were like really pumped about it and motivated to get it done, positive about it, you were more likely to maintain your mental sharpness. Whereas if you were in a depressive mood, like, oh, not this again or whatever, or I can't believe it, or no, I have to go to work, those kinds of things, it actually made it harder for that mental sharpness to stay engaged. Hutchison says that, I've just gone a bit further than I wanted to. Firstly, I want to say that workload showed a mixed effect of the amount of work that you have. So putting in longer hours on a single day was associated with higher sharpness, suggesting that people can rise to immediate demands. However, extended periods of overwork had the opposite impact and it lowered mental sharpness and made it harder to stay productive. So you could be mentally sharp and smash out a whole lot of work in a day, and that's fine. You could do that. If you did it over several days, say 2 to 3 to 4 days, then the decline got worse and worse as it went along. So yes, you can like grind out a massive day of working. Yeah, that was awesome. I did that. So that's not necessarily going to affect you too much. It's just the prolonged amounts are over days and days. So So Hutchison says that's the trade-off. You can push hard for a day or two and be fine. But if you grind without breaks for too long, you will pay the price later. So although the study focused on university students, the insights likely apply more broadly. And I think the three of us have already hinted at that with some of the things that we said. So the findings point to practical ways people can improve their changes of having more productive days. So Hutchison says from our data, or data, depending who you're talking to, there are 3 things you could do to try and maximize mental sharpness. 1 is getting enough sleep. 2 is avoiding burnout over long periods of time. And 3 is finding ways to reduce depressive traps. She also emphasized the importance of being patient with yourself when you are not at your best. Sometimes it's just not your day, and that's okay. Maybe this is the day where you cut yourself a little slack. That's the study, which you might look at it and go, yeah, well, that's really obvious. But sometimes it's not obvious because I tend to think that I get into these periods of work and I don't realize how mentally taxing it is on me until later on. A couple of days later, it's like, oh, okay, I've walked into that one again and now I feel like I can't do anything today. Yeah. But I think it's important what she said about, now I'm paraphrasing, but she said basically be kind to yourself in these moments because you're not meant to be like a superhuman. And there are some things like better sleep, etc., that you can do to improve your mental sharpness and get that extra 40 minutes in the day. What are your thoughts on that, Caroline?
Totally. Oh, yeah, I've been thinking about what you've been saying and then how it applies to me. Like on my work days, I feel like I'm the best in the morning. So I'll wake up, I'm sharp in the morning. As the day goes on, it declines. My sharpness really declines. So all my brain power is like focused like maybe up to lunchtime. After lunchtime, it's like, oh my gosh, I've really got to push to keep working and keep getting stuff done. And then I find when I've finished work and I'm just sitting down for a break, I'm brain dead. It's gone because I've used up so much mental energy. But I definitely find just in general, mornings are my best. Like I'll get up and that's it. So it's interesting. And definitely with sleep and mood, like I can relate to all of that. Makes a whole lot of sense.
What do you think, Lito? After hearing that, you're going to add a couple of extra hours, 40 winks to your day?
Oh, definitely I have to. Like I said, it's having a late night isn't just either scrolling on your phone or your iPad. Screens. Well, that's another different topic. But yeah, it's just having good sleep, restful sleep as well, even though sometimes you go to bed early. Sometimes I've done it. And my brain goes, oh, wait a minute. No, I'm still awake. And your body's going, no, that's the conflict that comes in with you guys. That's the worst. I've had it for a couple of nights. And part of trying to find a routine, and especially with people, like I said, with people with families, trying to find that routine, it can be hard and stressful. And we can always hope and pray that they can go through that. Work, goodness me, when you talk about being teachers and doctors and nurses, you can imagine their sort of mental health and their stress with what they have to go through, trying to get that good sleep and all that jazz. It's amazing. It's amazing. And
in your line of work, Lino, you'd be like entering information into computers and stuff because you work in a warehouse, don't you? So do you have to like...
That's correct.
So even handling information itself can be, when that mental fog comes in, can be really... It should be so easy to do, but it can just seem like a... Yeah.
I can relate to that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Caroline, you work with data as well.
Yeah. Here's a little thing that a question in my mind. I wonder if naps could be tied into this. Like if you're just having a slump because you're tired and you can't focus. I know that if I get a day where I can have like a half-hour nap or whatever, my alertness goes up afterwards. Yes. So I'm just wondering, there could be a role for naps in this as well. Yeah, well, there are countries that do have siestas, and I'm totally for it. Australia.
Yes. For a siesta in the workplace, yes. I agree.
Yeah.
I think Malta have it, don't they? Their shops close.
I think it's like fading out, but it is traditional that they work till like, I don't know, lunchtime, and they'll have maybe a couple of hours off and then time for eating and sleeping. And then they open the shops again, but they they open till late. So they extend their day by having a nap in the middle of it. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yep.
Some people swear by power naps. They say that it's the best thing ever. Yeah. Yeah.
It's great. Or what's it going? You're just watching TV or something. And all of a sudden, sometimes it's funny when you watch it on TikToks and all that Instagram. Someone's talking.
It's very true. Yeah, it's very true. Yes.
Do not do that with your partner. You're listening to me. I was like, I
love those reels. Yeah, when it's like someone's talking to you, and then you've got like music playing in your head, or or a parrot. You think a parrot dancing. Yeah, things like that. Yeah. I was going to say also, I'll just shout out to all the people who have children who are under the age of 1, including myself. Because I know what it's like to have 3 or 4 nights in a row of really bad sleep when thinking or something happens, and your mental sharpness just isn't there.
Yeah.
Yes. So don't be
those who have or those who have pugs who decide that they want to get up and go for the bathroom at 2 a.m.
Yes, that's right. Parents. Yeah.
So my actual children are fine now. They sleep pretty well, but my fur children sometimes want to wake me up to go bathroom in the middle of the night. And they fall back to sleep quite easily, but not me.
No.
Anyway.
No. No, for us.
Yeah, I'm feeling tired just thinking about this discussion. So mental fog coming.
I think mental fog's coming now.
Let's see if I can get through this episode without getting distracted or tired. All right. Yeah, we'll wrap it up there. So firstly, we want to thank you so much for joining us for episode 154 of the Catholics of Oz. And a big thank you to Odhran for the great interview and discussion about Father Monsignor John Hawes. See, I keep saying Father instead of Monsignor. There's the mental fog. Yeah, and we continue to wish him well and pray for him as he continues his research. And hopefully in the future we'll get some updates on how that's going. But before we go, we'd love to take a moment to thank our patrons, of which I don't have a list, and that's my fault. So I want to thank all the patrons of the network, and because you guys keep this going through your donations, and also everyone who prays for all of us in this network. Keep in mind that it is just as important that you do that for us too. So if you would like to join and be a patron of the StarQuest network, you can give donations and sign up at givestarquest.com. Also, while you're at the StarQuest website, don't forget that you can sign up for the Insiders Club and get a newsletter about what's coming up at sqpn.com/about newsletter. And we'd love to know your thoughts about the topics we discussed today. You can send us feedback by visiting sqpn.com/Oz, spelled OZ, where you can find links for today's episode. And I forgot to mention, Odhran has sent some links about Monsignor Hawes, which are really fascinating. One of them is a link to a website about him, and you can go to the St. Francis Xavier Cathedral that was in Geraldton, which was mentioned in the interview, and you can online and you can do like a virtual tour, which is really cool. I loved it. So it's a beautiful cathedral with a unique design. If you should have a look at that. I might even link directly to that if I can work out how to do that. So you can also find, talk about going brain fog. You can also find all of the shows on StarQuest on SQPN's socials. Just search for SQPN on your favorite social media. And also, if you would like to find us directly, facebook.com/Catholics of Oz. You can join us and discuss our latest episodes there. You can find us on SQPN's Discord, sqpn.com/Discord. And you can also reach us by good old email, catholicsofOz@sqpn.com. Caroline, thank you for grinding out this episode with us today.
Thank you. It was tough. I managed to hang in there and stay mentally focused. So thank you. Yep.
Lino, thank you so much for being sharp as always on this episode today.
I try to. I'm just going to thank coffee. It just keeps it going. That's the way to go.
They should
be a great episode, guys.
They should incorporate that into that study because coffee is magic water, so we should do that. Yeah,
I think we did a coffee episode.
We've done coffee episode. We've done an episode on how to make coffee. I don't know if we've talked about it.
Oh,
okay. Well, there's a
future topic.
Yeah, we'll have a coffee together to talk about it. Yeah.
Oh, delicious.
And once again, I'm Lindsay Sant. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 154 of the Catholics of Oz on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest network you're sure to enjoy. The Secrets of Technology. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/technology. We'd like to thank Patrick McCaffrey of Moonshadow Studios for editing this episode. To have your audio edited professionally and with care, check out more of Patrick's work at moonshadowstudios.biz. That's moonshadowstudios.biz.